Hello and welcome to citiesabc.com, series of interviews and profiles with global thought leaders, experts, and people shaping and creating new narratives for our world, society, and business industry. My name is Dinis Guarda, and I'm here to talk about the biggest problems humanity is facing, the questions and the challenge, and how can we think bigger and out of the box to create solutions and to create impactful ways and new directions and narratives that allow us to improve the world and as well come up with solutions, especially with the challenge we are facing with everything going on in the world. This is a platform that is created, and my series of interviews are part of the citiesabc.com. There's a new wiki, 4AR, Intelligent HQ, and as well Smart Cities Tech digital platform for reinventing and uniting cities, universities, and all of us as citizens that are part of this world. Today we have with us Matthieu Melki, that is an impact entrepreneur, as well a blockchain evangelist, and becoming increasingly as well a smart cities and smart strategies strategist. He's been behind the concept of Smart Florida, that has been as well the Blockchain Association, and as well building the idea and the concept of Miami Dade City. And as well has been as well involved with the Noos Labs, that is a platform that is relating in creating a co-working space for urban tech and real estate and logistics sector. Welcome to our podcast, Matthieu.
Thank you. Hi, Dinis.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I'm really excited about this interview is that you are leading a very cutting edge sector that is really in this inception. So if we talk about blockchain, we have a lot of stuff, but if we talk about smart cities and smart infrastructure, there's a lot of stuff still. So to start, I want to start with the basis. So you are French and you are in the US, and you are as well leading with a very important thing on that level. So I would like to start, and I will touch that during the interview, but I would like to start with your background. How did your education, and as well, France has a strong background of education, strong civic and social and actually city culture, and the US is completely different. So I would like to start probably with your basis, and how do you end up in Florida and now being one of the people leading a lot of innovation over there?
Yes, so I studied law, international law at the Sorbonne University. I did a master degree in international law and 1 year postgraduate in international banking law. So after my postgraduate, I started working for banks. I worked at the headquarters of BNP Paribas, one of the largest French bank. And after that, I had an opportunity to work in an American bank called Penn Weber. That was the fourth largest broker in the USA in '98. So right after my postgraduate, I went to the US and I worked for Penn Weber as an intern. It was a brokerage firm, and I liked it a lot. I was working on NASDAQ securities, and I did my Series 7. I took my Series 7 at 23-year-old and became a broker. So I worked almost 2 years and a half for this bank before we got bought up by UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland. So then I came back to Europe and I worked with the UBS office in Paris for a little less than 3 years, mainly in real estate. So I was working in the bank, working with institutional clients and structuring real estate portfolios. And I decided to do the same on my own. So I left the bank and created a company, which I ran for about 10 years, for which we were redeveloping properties, mainly buying offices that we would transform into residential. So we did that, buying offices overlooking monuments and then refurbishing them into apartments, into high-end apartments. And I did that for about 10 years. And so during my stay in the US, I was in Miami in 98. I arrived in Miami in 98 when I was working at the bank. And I always wanted to go back there. I knew I was gonna go back there. I always loved Miami. I've always seen Miami as a mega lopolis, as a big city. And when I was there in '98, it was pretty much a village. There was no downtown. There was just South Beach. Um, um, lot of real estate, not a lot of economic activity. But 20 years later, when I decided to come back, I saw an opportunity with the development of what's called the Greater Downtown Miami. And I understood with the investment that were being made, particularly by one French investor called Bernard Arnault, that something was going on. I saw Brickell City Center with Swire Group, and I saw all the investment in real estate being infused in Miami. And I understood that was a good time to come back. And I was thinking, what can I do? So I was in vacation with my wife and my son. And, as a real estate developer, I always go and check prices and look at, opportunities. And by doing that, I saw an anomaly in the market. I saw the district where Bernard Arnault was investing, and I saw Brickell City Center. And those two districts were about $300 a foot. And in front of those districts, you have South Beach, which is the highest priced community in Miami. And right in the middle, you had a part that was called Wynwood, and that was worth a little bit over $100 per square foot. So I figured that it was an anomaly on the map. So I decided that that was a good time to come back, and I created a company called Wynwood Fund. And with a few French investors, I raised some money, and we bought buildings in this area that we redeveloped into extended stay, about two residential building and an office building that we transformed into a hotel. So that's what took me back to Miami in 2013.
Oh, that's amazing. So I think just I would like to touch one thing over there in terms of the background. So how do you see, and I want to touch that to go to the work you've been doing both in real estate, but as well with cities and the blockchain. So
Yes.
the first question is still about your career is that how do you see the main difference being educated and as well a French citizen and then moving to Florida and to Miami? And as well, there's a cultural difference. There's a different way. France is much more social driven, social welfare, less entrepreneurial. Probably you can say I'm partly French as well, so I can test that. And as well, Florida and Miami have probably in the last decade has been going through a lot of challenges as well. So how do you see the difference from a country that is quite much more advanced, but as well complex, but as well more welfare driven to Florida and Miami?
Yes, that's correct. You can see it in urbanism. You can see the way European culture and French culture see urbanism. In France, when you build a building, you always think about the common areas. You always think about the circulation also outside of the building. And in the US, it's more the property stops at the property line. And this is one of the things I wanted to bring as well in Miami is the thought of common good. And by the way, the company we did Noos Lab means collective mind in Greek. And it's very European compared to the US, that it's a little bit more individualistic in terms of investment and don't necessarily think about the common good. So urbanization is very different in the US and in Europe. Ecological issues are taken much more seriously in some parts of Europe, as you know. So yes, that's very very true.
So in terms of the, so you have a background in finance and then you passed to the area of property and all these areas of investment and property building as well.
Yes.
And now, and as well, you have found the Blockchain Association of Florida. So can you tell us about these different things and how you've been juggling this, and about, of course, about the Blockchain Association, which is particularly important organization over there?
Yes. So my background is in finance, was in securities, in Nasdaq securities. So we were buying and selling stocks. That's how I get influenced with technology. And I got to meet some people that were involved in the 98 .com era that are now involved in the blockchain era. That's also gave me a lot of insight about the technology, and also gave me the insurance that blockchain was really something that was going to take over the same way internet took over the world at the end of the 90s. I see blockchain as a new internet per se, for exchanging not only data but values. So I understood the importance of the technology, and I decided to create the Florida Blockchain Foundation to carry the message and to promote the use of blockchain as an infrastructure layer for companies, because I believe that this infrastructure is going to be the basis of the next generation infrastructure for cities. Because with this technology, you can securely exchange data sets and protect identity. It's much more secure as well, and it basically it provides what the internet and the current legacy system were not providing for companies and individuals to exchange securely their information. So for me, blockchain is really the base that will allow us to get to a new era collectively.
So I think you touch, of course, financial, which is, of course, right now is becoming more increasingly finance and fintech, and of course, the security has been one of the first ones, as well the internet, the inception of the internet, and as well the inception of blockchain industry. So
Yes.
from the parallel of the inception of the internet and the inception of blockchain industry, what parallels you would make, and as well, how we would see you mentioned as well, for instance, the internet created the relationship between elements and different things, and of course the blockchain is a bit of the internet of value. So can you tell us a bit about that background, because I want to touch then coming to cities and different things, how we go from there, but that part of the internet of value, and as well related with your experience in finance, and as well with the organization of Blockchain Association.
So in finance and blockchain are very related, but there are new metrics, if you will, in the blockchain, and it's called the tokenization per se, that you can convert any security or any asset into a token that you can trade. And by holding the token, you also own a part of the company and the infrastructure. So you incentivize the consumer to use the token to purchase product of this company, and then they can also own part of the company. So for me, it blends a characteristic of finance altogether into the token. So the token is a new way for exchanging things, and this is a financial instrument. So that's the relationship between blockchain and finance is very strong. Yeah.
So coming back to and this is particularly important when it comes to property. So because property, when I talk about property, we talk about registrations, we talk about the value of the property, you talk about the documents that you have to get, and as well all the infrastructure around this. So Is this something that you trying to been working on the blockchain association as well in the property? Are you trying to relate this with the work you've been doing right now with the Florida and as well Miami?
So we have three components in the foundation that we want to touch by industry. So the idea is to rethink relationship within industry. So real estate is one, supply chain logistic is another one, and healthcare is another one. We started our work in supply chain logistics because it's the economic engine of the city of Miami. Real estate is also part of the foundation. We have the Real Estate Council, but it's not really operational yet. And I think there is much work to be done in the field of real estate in order to be efficient, because when we talk about tokenization of real estate, you're talking about fractional ownership. That means the ability to divide a building into smaller fractions that you can sell to smaller investors. But that raises a lot of other issues related to the management of the building, the payment of the taxes, the payment of the management of the building, and regulation in the field. It's very early for now to deploy this kind of solution, and also the fact that there is no secondary market for these assets to trade. So the idea of tokenizing real estate is to bring liquidity in an industry that is not necessarily liquid. And you can only achieve this liquidity if you have a secondary market where these tokens can trade. And this is not the case right now. So this is something that we are working on. I formed a real estate council with some of the best thought leaders in South Florida to work on this, but this is not something that we are really implementing right now. We are more working with the Smart Supply Chain Alliance, which is the name of the group for supply chain. But for real estate, it's very academic right now, I would say.
Oh, that's very interesting, because there's a lot of studies around the world on that level. So I would like right now to touch on the work with Smart Florida and Miami Beta City. So what's the goal of the and you touched the supply chain, which is a massive part, and I saw as well that you've been working in terms of real estate, innovative tech and different areas, but on the supply chain and as well on the work of Smart Florida. So can you tell us what is Smart Florida, first of all, for the people that never heard about it?
Yes, sure. I'm going to give a little background first about the genesis of Smart Florida and why it was created. We started a project in 2017 called Miami Beta City. And Miami Beta City was a project to transform the way we operate regionally within cities, within counties, by industry. And the idea was to reconcile the urban landscape with the industrial and the human. You have the urban landscape, which are your roads, your buildings and your streets, the industrial, your companies that are working, your industrial plants, and the human, which are the people that work in this company and that live in those cities. And the way we have developed cities have not really reconciled those three. That's why we have some kind of a chaos into cities when it comes to environment, traffic, pollution, because when companies move things within cities and operate, they create stress on the urban level and on the human level. So the whole idea of Beta City was to create an environment where you can beta test solution on a digital world before you do anything on the real world. And to achieve that, you would need a collaboration between universities, companies, and government agencies that will come together to create sort of an avatar of the city, a digital model that will replicate the city, pretty much like a sim city, but for real. So you take Miami, you take the main logistic hubs, you take downtown area with the main point of attraction and the main buildings, and you work with your university, with the architecture department, the computer science department, and you create digital avatars of those buildings. Once you have those digital avatars, then you can work in situation, in VR, in AR, and you can start running all kinds of tests, of beta tests, to see if I move this from this point A to point B, what will be the consequences to the traffic, to the pollution? What would be the efficiency that we can create if we share this information between the transportation department of the city and the real estate developers? Because they know they're going to move some critical things within the city at this period of time. So you can pretty much adapt the city as an organism. We were comparing the city as a human body with his blood and cells and enzymes, and everything was in a constant flux, constant movement. So if you connect all these in an environment where you can test the repercussion of what you do, then you can take conclusion, and then you can avoid a lot of mistake in the real world. So that was the whole project called Miami Beta City, and we got awarded the keys of the county for this project, and we wanted to work on it with Noos lab. It was a smart city lab where we had started to get all those people together, but it was a bit too early in 2018, and it was a bit broad. So we had to stop the Noos lab because there was not enough tech companies in Miami to deal with. But the project became I carried this project through the foundation, and I applied it to the smart supply chain logistics. So when we created the Florida Blockchain Foundation, we started with the supply chain logistics. So we created the Smart Supply Chain Alliance, which is a group of companies that are working on supply chain visibility and supply chain transparency. So the group is working on aligning port and airport into a single platform to share information about what's coming in and out of Miami, and to provide visibility to the shipments when they arrive in Miami, and to be able to share information is going to create efficiencies in the city. So the principle of Miami Beta City, we applied it in the supply chain logistics in Miami. So that's how we created Smart Florida as a form of a foundation, and we have in the foundation the Port of Miami, Miami International Airport, and freight forwarders, carriers, shippers, and company that provide solution for supply chain visibility, track and trace solution, basically, to be able to monitor shipments and move them more efficiently in the city.
Very interesting, and I think you touched a lot of things. So there was a delay, but you touch a lot of things related with the concept of a balanced, intelligent city or smart city, depends on what you want. So how was so far your work with the institutions of the city? So you touched a couple of companies, but you didn't touch much of the mayor and the different areas. So I know that it's an independent organization, but how is your relationship? Because, like you said, a project like what you're building, to be successful, you need to leverage the relationships with both the universities, the government, the mayors, all the companies.
Yes.
How has been that work? Because that work is very difficult and especially super necessary, especially in the world we live in today.
Yes. Yes, it was a very challenging, but I think we had a lot of traction because we did with Noos Labs a lot of educational work through workshops. I am also the co-chair of the innovation committee of the trade and logistic committee of the Miami Dade Beacon Council. Miami Dade Beacon Council is the economic development partnership of Miami Dade, which oversee, I think, over 10,000 companies. And they have a trade and logistic committee. And in this committee, we oversee everything that's going on in Miami in terms of supply chain logistics. I don't know if you're aware of it, but Miami is a huge international logistic hub. We move 153 billion worth of goods in and out of Miami every year. So if you think about one industry that Miami could represent, it's supply chain logistics. So that's why we started to work with that industry, to transform that industry using blockchain, but not only, to transform Miami and to transform this industry in particular.
So from the work, let's say since you started until now, what would be the major benchmarks that you achieved so far, and what you intend to do in terms of the future, in terms of the blockchain, both the blockchain association, but as well, especially with the Smart Florida organization? Because of course, Florida is a massive economy in itself, but of course, the US is in a very strange situation of geopoliticals, and as well, especially for the people that look at the US from outside, you feel, okay, what is happening with the giant that is a bit of a chaos? So how has been that work? Because I think it's important to explain, and as well special to hear that experience to other cities around the world. I've been interviewing more cities and more organizations like yours, and it's really interesting to see the nuances of building smart city infrastructure, but as well smart infrastructure for organizations and for countries and so forth.
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, the question is, so how has it been going so far, the challenge of building the organization and the relationships with institutions, the local institutions, especially the governmental, and as well the corporations, because it's a big challenge what you're building. Yes. And it's quite impressive, but as well, I'm sure that you've been going for a lot of the challenge. Yeah.
So as I said, we did a lot of educational work. So we did a lot of workshops, always inviting the county, the transportation department, the port, the airport, also custom and border protection. So we did a lot of educational work, but also there is a trend. It's not something that we started this project, but there is an underlying trend upon collaboration, especially in supply chain logistics, because I think companies understand now that they need to break the silos of data and start exchanging information and collaborate to create efficiencies. So yes, it was a challenge, but the trend is going on our direction. For sometimes we, with Noos Lab, especially when we started, it was a little bit like we were speaking Chinese. When we were, and I don't know if it's a good analogy right now, but that's
I understand.
That's about when we started to explain that we needed to work with different platforms and connect those platforms to collaborate. I mean, collaboration was almost a curse word in the logistic field, and now they talk about co-opetition. It's a mix between competition and collaboration. And I'm not the one saying it, is the CEO of FedEx. They are promoting it in a big way. Co-opetition, meaning giant industries now that where competitors in the past are now starting to understand the benefit of sharing information and commoditize some of their services to focus more on their customers and to focus more on other areas of research and development and stop competing on stuff that there is not much margin to do. So really now we see a shift, and in the US as well, towards this collaborative tool. I can tell you now that, for example, in Miami, Port and Airport are working, and with us, we are involved in the project to build what's called a cargo community system. A cargo community system is a platform that links all the people involved in moving goods in and out of a port or an airport. And the particularity of our project is that, and I think it would be the only one in the world for now, that links port and airport into the same platform. And that in itself is a breakthrough, because you then create a lot of efficiencies when you don't have to duplicate the process when you move something within the city. When something arrives by boat and has to go by truck to the airport and leave by air, every time you change custody, every time there is an event going on, you need to identify what is it, where is it going, has it been opened, does it need to go back? Always the same question. If you commoditize that and you create one single instance of the truth of what it is, where is it going, and to where, all the questions that you need to know about the shipment, you enter them once into a system, and anyone who needs it get access to that information. Instead of every time replicating the information and the time you waste every time, you save it. And also knowing what is going and where, you can consolidate your loads. So that means less truck on the road, or the truck more full, or going at the right direction and with the right merchandise inside the same truck. So by doing this kind of collaboration, I think companies and also governments understand the whole benefit of it. And if in Europe it has been going on for years, the systems that we are talking about now in the US sometimes have been in use in Europe for 10 or 15 years. But it's a trend right now. So it's been challenging, yes, but hopefully in the coming years, in the coming months, and especially with what's happening with COVID, we understand the benefit of sharing information. And the silver lining to this is that that information, that data, you can monetize it. And the aggregated data that you create by sharing it, this has tremendous value. This is what it is about. It's about creating value in the collectivity, in a collective group within the industries. That's what it's all about.
Well, that's amazing. And so one of the things that I really like about some of the studies you've been doing, especially with the Noosphere Architecture. So can you talk a bit about in the presentation on the project that you did, the Better City project? Mm-hmm. One of the things that I like particularly is the work in the scatter chart of the Noosphere Architecture. Yeah. And I think this is really important for cities, because I think there's, first of all, there's very small reflection in terms of just what is a smart city, and there's no kind of standards. And I would like to start by that, defining how do you see the smart city in a simple way, and at the same time then the architecture that you build, because that's very, very interesting, and we're going to put this in the presentation. I think it's really important to highlight this.
So for me, a smart city before all is a community. It's not technology. I mean, it is technology, but first it is a community of companies and individuals that are willing to work on the same infrastructure. And that's what seduced me about Miami, because Miami has such a strong community and a history of resiliency because of the all the elements and the hurricane season and all the challenges of sea level, the sea level rise, all the challenges that the city has to face, and also the multiple ethnicity in the city, the mosaic that you have in that city, make it a very resilient and community-oriented city. So when I saw the supply chain logistic community, I understood that this was possible to create a common platform, a common infrastructure. And I think I was not wrong, and proof is that now, 3 years later, I see the port and airport working on the same platform. And as I said, for me, that's a breakthrough already. When you start having two big government agencies agreeing to share their critical data and create efficiencies for the city, that's a smart city. That's what I call a smart city, is when a community agrees to work on the same infrastructure. For me, that's what it is.
And on this infrastructure, I don't want to go too much technical, but I think it's important because you have here the digital, the physical, and you touch the
Yes.
digital, the sim city, and actually there's the digital twin. That is a concept very strong on the smart cities and the cities infrastructure. But we have the digital and physical, the front end and the back end.
Yes.
Could you let us a bit of, I think for cities around the world looking at this, how would you suggest, and as well you build proprietary technology, you're using multiple technologies. How has been your experience? Because there's a lot of technologies here, from blockchain to cybersecurity, cloud, raw data, and a lot of drones, robots, and so forth.
Yes. Yes. First, we have to understand that it's a complete rethinking of cities. So you have to involve all the stakeholders in the conversation, and you have to use all the tools, the technological tools that we have nowadays to create this platform. So basically, the Noosphere was a motherboard. It was a motherboard that you create as first as a Lego base, because what you want is interoperability. You want all your devices, you want all your companies to be able to interoperate with one another. You want, if you want to develop a module, you want this module to be used by other companies. The problem in the past we have seen a lot of companies developing their own system, their own software. And the problem was to make those software communicate with one another. And that's what create chaos and problems and redundancy and all kinds of trouble that we see. So the idea is to take a step back and say, what did we do wrong in the past? And how can we make it better in the future? And the first thing to do, if you want to make it better, is to create a base that will assure you interoperability and scalability. That means you think of it as a Lego base.
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. I think it's interesting. Continue. I think it's important just to look here at this stage at least, because I think it's really important for our audience. Yeah, if you could just explain. Yeah.
So you need all those technologies to create the motherboard. In the middle, you see a BIM, building information modeling. So building information modeling is a collaborative technology that allows all the parties involved in the creation of a building from creation to management. But at the beginning, when they create the building, everyone is working on the same model. That means, and it's parametric. That means if I move 1 inch of my base, the whole building is going to move 1 inch. So this is the first collaborative tool that we have at our disposal to create this platform, to replicate the buildings in digital. So you create avatars of buildings, so you can start working on predictive analytics. When you have this kind of tool, you can say, okay, I have my building now, I want to change my electrical system or my air conditioning. I want to know how it's going to look, but I also want to know how much energy it's going to consume. So put your air conditioner in my digital model and see how it works, and calculate how much energy you're going to consume, etc. So this is one of the first tool, the BEAM. Then you have IoT devices. This is Internet of Things. So sensors. Sensors, why? Because they are gonna give us information about a lot of things, pretty much like humans do when we monitor temperature, but also humidity, vibration for shocks, um, light. You can monitor a lot of things with sensors. So IoT, building information modeling, you need a cloud management system to collect this information and manage it. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, and of course, blockchain. Blockchain is used to secure an event. Blockchain, as you probably know, works with a certain governance, and when something happens, it's recorded in a ledger, and that's recorded in an immutable manner. That means once it's in there, first you consider that the event really occurred, because before being in there, it has been accepted by a group of companies or a group of users that say, okay, this event really happened. So now it's recorded on the blockchain, so you can rely on it. So in a smart city case, it's going to be used as a notary to record information and to know what has happened in the real life. And first is it's going to reduce issues, because when something has been accepted by a collective, then you have less claims, and when you have claims, you can it's more easy to resolve. But you can build on top of this information what's called smart contracts. That means you can link data with one another and create contract. Like if event A and B occurs, then event C and D can occur. So if my window is broken, I can order a new one. You can automate that with blockchain. So if you link, for example, I give you the example of the window, building information model of your building with the blockchain, and the blockchain is linked to suppliers of window. When a window breaks, you don't need to ask anyone to order a new one. It will be, if the window costs less than such and such and can be delivered in such and such, I buy it. You pre-program things. So blockchain is one important component. And then what you see on the screens are all the others component of the platform. Of course, fiber, sensors, I said, drones. Drones are going to be very instrumental for cities, for deliveries, for monitoring, for warehouse inventories. And there are many use in drones. So basically, yes, that's
very impressive. I will just show this slide as well. I touch it, but I want to teach. I really like the way you put it, and I think it's interesting for our audience. So it's the models and the Lego. I think it's really interesting here. So as a wrap up. So one question I have in this, and wrapping up, we're more or less close to 1 hour now. So how much of this did you manage to achieve right now already in the solutions that you've been putting in Florida?
So so for this, as I said, this was a bit experimental, because remember that what the document we are seeing now is from 2018. But we get our point to the community. We managed to get the attention of the largest stakeholders in Miami-Dade, being not only the port and airport, but we have companies like Cargill, DHL, Interport Logistics. So we we have raised the attention, and we started, that was before COVID, unfortunately, but we started to work on different modules. And the first modules we were starting to elaborate was a proof of concept at the port of Miami to accelerate the release of shipments from the boat to the yard and from the yard to the truck. That was the first leg of the platform that we want to create. The idea was to do the same thing at the airport and link them together. So we have two proof of concept that are part of this cargo community system that I mentioned earlier, which are at the port and at the airport.
No, that's amazing. So I think, well, I think I'm quite impressed with this. So we were going to put these links in the interview, and I think it's really interesting to see these parts and that work, because it's coming back from the theory to the practice, and we need that more than ever. So probably as one of the last questions, because we're passing 1 hour. So how do you see, especially all the challenge right now with COVID-19, and the effect this is having on the economics, on the digital transformation of cities, and as well in other areas? Do you see this as an element that can actually accelerate a lot of this innovation that you're trying to put? What's your views on this?
So first, for me, it highlighted one thing that is crucial, and that if we add that tool, we would have managed the crisis differently. And this is a blockchain platform for medical supplies. That means the ability to monitor medical supplies shipments, to know where things are and in what state they are. If you see the stockpile inventory for ventilators, for example, from the past SRAS epidemic in, I think it was in 2009 or something, they piled some ventilators, and when they needed it, they sent it to the hospitals, and the batteries were empty. Why? Because they didn't have the connectivity aspect to it, so they couldn't know the status of these devices. Also, the fact that you don't know where things are, and you need to send someone. So go to the warehouse and verify that in this box, it is what I think it is, and it's working. So this connectivity part was really missing during this management of the pandemic. And also the visibility and the transparency, because you had a lot of scams, price gouging, because people were taking advantage of the situation of crisis to increase prices, and especially to hospitals where you already know that they are not in especially good financial condition, and on top of that they have to experience these price gouging issues, and so all that really highlighted the deficiencies of the supply chain in the medical space, in the medical supply space. But now start applying this principle to the overall economy of being able to monitor things, to do preventive analysis and preventive maintenance on things, create efficiencies by connecting devices, aggregate data, interpret and manage this data is going to be critical. So that's what I will take of this crisis, is that we need more transparency, we need more connectivity, and more collaboration, and more than ever, now that the economy is going to suffer from the consequences of this, because you will need to operate businesses at 50% capacity most of the time. If you see restaurants, they are now open at 50% capacity. All the businesses, they will have to reduce their capacity. So we have to re-underwrite every business on earth. Not one business is going to function like before. So where do we find efficiency? And we find efficiency by collaborating and by exchanging information between us. And it's going to be, I think, situations where we need to change the way of thinking. And we need to think like, I take care of you, you take care of me. We are in a situation of crisis where we all need to get out of this together, and the efficiencies, we're going to find them in collaboration. There is no other way.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most important thing is how can we make, you touch a very important thing when you talk about smart cities, the importance of collaboration, the importance of community.
Yes.
So as the last question and the last input from you, so from this experience working in property, in blockchain, in different community engagement, but as well in technology and with a lot of companies, what would be like the summary that you would pass to other smart cities and other organizations around the world like yours that are wanting to learn and as well connecting with you?
I would say there are organizations within city, within counties, or in different countries. In Miami, it's Miami Dade Beacon Council, or you have Chamber of Commerce. Go to organizations that federate a lot of organizations. Miami Dade Beacon Council has done a fantastic job over the years, working with all the county stakeholders, government agency, universities, companies. They have a project called One Community, One Goal, that regroups all the 7 different industries within cities. So I would say look for collaboration, look for a group of companies that are like-minded and that want to go in the direction of collaboration. And also it's a way to preserve ourselves, because what's happening right now is very important. What's happening right now is a lot of the situation with the disease is going to allow big companies and governments to take over our freedom, our information, to protect us. If we don't collaborate and if we are not organized as citizens and as companies to protect the way we want this information to be shared, we are going to fall into 1984 Orwell kind of situation. And this is not what smart cities are about. I see a lot of conspiracy theories about 5G and the way they want to control us, etc. No. We still can be in control if we want to. So my advice would be get involved with organizations locally that federate industries. So Chamber of Commerce, I say again, Miami Dade Beacon Council. In Miami, there are other companies like this. Look for those ones.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So thank you so much. I don't know if you want just to highlight some of the links to the organizations that you're doing. So Smart Florida, and where people can find it.
Yep. So it's smartfl.org. Smartfl.org.
Okay.
The website.
Yeah, we're going to put all of that here. And the other contacts that you want to highlight for our audience all over the world?
Sorry?
Any other contacts or links that you want to highlight for our audience around the world?
No, I think that's a good one.
That's a good one. Okay.
Smart Florida, formerly Florida Blockchain Foundation, and yes, you can look Miami Dade Beacon Council again. You can Google it.
Perfect. No, I appreciate. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I think there's a lot of things here. So we put as well 2 slides during the presentation to show. We're going to put a profile, and I think there's a lot of knowledge and as well, especially experience building this. We wish you great luck for building this, because it's a great project and very necessary. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dinis.
This fantastic. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.